Welcome to the Rock Guitar Confidential Podcast with Ryan and Scott. Today's episode, New Bands Part 2 / Underrated Bands You Need to Know About. Let's get on board. I think Camelot is a good name for a band.
It would be. Well, it would be cool if you all dressed up as Kennedys.
Yeah, it's all cosplayers, really.
Like Rose on vocals.
I was actually thinking more like Round Table kind of thing. They have like there's one of them tries to steal the other one's wife, and then
I was thinking
die tragically or something.
Like Teddy on bass.
Teddy, he wouldn't be able to handle it, man. He's too,
No, he's the big rock solid guy, and then Bobby on drums.
Let's just say his liquid assets would keep him from being able to keep a rock solid, line going. That's all I can say on that.
Well, with JFK on guitar, he'd blow the audience away.
That's true. And then
absolutely.
Never mind. I'm not going to go anymore.
And then Rose on lead vocals in her black dress. For
this is some very, very specific audience we're making this conversation for right now.
Well, the people need to know their history.
That's true. The history of Camelot. But
right.
Not the Guinevere, Lancelot, Gwenevere. Yeah. Anyway, guys, hey, thank you so much for listening. This is the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with me, Scott Allen, and over there is
Ryan Bowe.
Thank you so much for tuning in. And this episode is going to be strange. We're only like 12, 13 episodes in. I don't know how many episodes
This is episode 12.
And we're already doing a part 2 episode. So today we're going to be tackling underrated bands from back in the day and / new bands you should be aware of, because listening to our previous podcast, we realized there's like a million bands we've got to talk about.
Yes.
So
this will be underrated / and or new bands part 2.
Yep, exactly right. So this is just bands that kind of turn you on to. I think one common complaint I hear a lot is actually that there's no good rock anymore. That, hey man, all rock sucks. The only good rock stopped being made in like 1991. And I always say, well, there's a lot of great music actually from like the mid 70s through the early mid 90s that a lot of people didn't know about, and especially like late 90s, early 2000s bands that were sort of under the radar because they really weren't getting pushed. They're really good that people should know about. And then there's a bunch of new bands too that unfortunately, because there's not really radio anymore that exists, and whatever rock radio does exist, it's like the same 20 songs on a nonstop playlist forever. You know what I mean? So you kind of need to help turn people on to those things too. So that's the purpose of this podcast, is to say, hey guys, there's other stuff out there you should be checking out. If you like classic rock and metal, what do you think? Ryan, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you just have to dig a little harder to find it. So.
Yeah. It's not like back in the day where it's on the radio, like, oh, that's cool, or turn on TV and like, oh man, who's this new band? This is pretty amazing,
Right, yeah, you're just going to be presented with more Post Malone.
If you're very unfortunate, then yes, that's true.
The Post Maloning.
I got to tell you though, if all the face tattooed guys I've seen, he's definitely one of them, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I got into a debate. I got into a debate with my buddy last night about Post Malone.
Do tell.
Yeah, well, so we were watching the latest season of Beavis and Butthead, and I'm happy to report that Beavis and Butthead are ripping on Post Malone.
Okay, that's good.
And TikTok videos.
Yeah, so that's doing service to humanity right there.
Yeah, so it's things have turned.
Okay.
And I said something to the effect of, like, why is there Post Malone? Why does he have a music career?
Yeah, but he's got face tattoos, man.
Yeah, and my buddy was trying to explain. He said, well, but it's kind of like, he's kind of like Eminem. He came up and I just asked, what is Post Malone good at?
Yeah.
He said, well, what's Eminem good at? And I said, Eminem is good at rapping.
Yep.
Now, you may or may not like that, but he's able to say certain words in a certain cadence, and they occasionally rhyme.
Yeah.
He can rap well.
Yeah. As well as one can rap.
As well as one can rap.
Yeah.
So he's at least good at doing that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's so funny. I think I've had this conversation with you. I don't know if we've done it on air before, but I remember one a while back, and it blew my mind. Because I remember talking to them and saying, like, I don't understand, like, why do people like this stuff? Like some EDM artist or some like Post Malone style person, or Machine Gun Kelly, or even like Ariana Grande or Selena Gomez and stuff. I'm like, there's just nothing there musically happening. It's the most banal stuff. And what they told me, and that blew my mind, is that, well, they maybe just like them. They just think that they're cool. They like their celebrity Instagram page. They like their Facebook page or whatever, their TikTok videos they make. I'm like, what?
It's not about music.
I'm like, so it's not about, okay, that explains why they're popular, because their music couldn't be it. You know what I mean? And I remember thinking, I don't give a crap about what's your Facebook page. I want good music, man.
Yeah, I asked my buddy point blank, what is Post Malone good at?
Yep.
Well, you got to know, you came up at a certain time. Just answer the question simply. Eminem's good at rapping.
Yeah.
What's Post Malone good at?
Yep. Eddie Van Halen.
Right. Just tell me what it is. What's the thing he's good at?
Yeah, it's. I think
I
it's
couldn't
weird.
get a straight answer. If you can't answer the question simply,
It's almost like taking the MTV thing where it became a visual medium and like making it steroids, where like the only thing that matters is what you're wearing or what you're doing. And it's
Yep.
not even about your music at all. That's almost a secondary thought. You know what I mean? And that's something I can't relate to. I think also that's because you and I both grew up in a time before social media, where it was just kind of this weird abstraction, like, oh, MySpace, that's kind of cool, I guess. You know, whatever. You know, we didn't really think much about it.
Right.
But if you grew up and you had Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and you know all that stuff is your whole world, then of course that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense why someone who's like 19 or 18 right now would be kind of obsessed with that. I also don't think that even if you and I were around at this time at that age, that we would be. We definitely require more quality. We need more substance to what we're listening to.
no doubt. And
Yeah,
to be fair, most of our students probably do too, and that's
Yeah.
why they come to see us.
Yeah, that's true. Most musicians generally do. I mean,
That's
they
right.
want to hear good playing. You know, that's kind of why we play music. You know what I mean? And I think it's the people who are like the not musicians who don't really have any kind of. Because it's funny, if you talk to someone who's not a musician, whether they play saxophone, piano, guitar, or whatever it might be, they just don't have a point of reference for what's good or bad. Everything sounds equal to them. So
Right.
they hear like, you know, Jeff Tate from Queensryche and they hear like, you know, Selena Gomez. There's like the same. You know, it's the same.
Yeah,
You know,
they don't. They don't hear. They don't know what auto tune is.
Yeah, they don't understand what
Yeah.
range is or pitch or understanding how to navigate melody or how to have interesting chord changes. They don't,
Head voice versus
Yeah.
chest voice
versus you know this is going to be something with harmonic extensions with 11ths and 9ths and things like that, and then this,
13s.
the transition is going to be this. You know, it just doesn't matter to them. You know, and to a degree, you could say, okay, well, as long as it hits them a certain way, then the art is doing its job. But at the same time, I also want more from my art than that. I don't want it to be just so cookie cutter. It's almost like, you know, in a pinch, like an egg McMuffin is fine, but sometimes I want to have a real breakfast too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And I want more people to want to have real breakfast.
Yes, and desire to have more. And what is it really like to have a real breakfast, and what's the difference?
Yeah,
and,
I want people to know what spinach is.
Yeah, know that trash is trash, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes everyone wants to have Domino's pizza. Sometimes, you know,
Yeah,
it's
every now and then you
yeah.
want to have a bag of Doritos.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
fine, but don't
Yeah.
say that's like, oh, this is a French Laundry concoction. You know what I mean? This
Yeah,
is,
you're not going to eat Doritos for breakfast, lunch, and
Yeah,
dinner.
exactly. So to me, that seems the difference. And I think I've said this before that, like, you know, there's been terrible music being made every time, every generation, every year. But it's
Sure.
like you kind of need to have that. It's like the good with the bad. But it seems like the menu is filled with like Doritos and, you know, like Oreo cookie cakes and stuff like that. It's like
Yeah.
nothing else on the menu. You know what I mean? It's,
You know, one of my buddies' arguments for I'm taking our podcast in a whole tangent right now.
we will get
but
to the underrated bands, I promise.
We will. Yeah, and his whole thing about Post Malone was all about, well, you know, technology was in a certain place, and you know that's the problem.
Yeah.
Without technology, there wouldn't be Post Malone.
Yeah, or EDM, or huge amounts of music that's being made right now. You know what I mean? Marshmello wouldn't have a career. DJ Khaled wouldn't have a career.
I don't even know what
Yeah.
DJ Khaled does.
I don't care either. It's. I mean, he's already not as popular as he was 2 years ago, and he's like even less popular than he was 6 years ago. So it's like,
Yeah, and that's an honest assessment. I had
Yeah.
a student mention something about dressing up as Pitbull for Halloween. The bald guy
Yeah,
who I don't really know
he's
what
like
he
from
does
Miami.
either.
He's like from Miami. That's my understand.
Yeah.
That's
I
funny.
I don't know what he does.
On that same note, it's funny. And I'll say I like Bon Jovi, but I
Sure.
remember like I was like recording my second album is a long time, like maybe 10 years ago. And I remember being in the studio with my bass player, and somehow Bon Jovi came up. He's like, you know, I just don't understand why they're so popular. I mean, I like Bon Jovi, okay, but they're like crazy popular for what they are. And he looked at me, just like, I don't know, they're from New Jersey. And I was like, is that a cool thing to be from
Wait,
New Jersey? I
what-
mean, it's like I don't.
Yeah, and what gave you that clue?
Yeah, I know, but I also don't understand like why is that a cool thing from New
Yeah,
Jersey? I mean,
why
I
is
don't,
that a thing?
I don't. I mean, turnpikes or your thing. I don't know. I don't get it. But
I did actually. New Jersey is the site of the World Bird Watching World Series.
I don't even want to know how you know that.
I
That's-
watch Real Sports with Brian Gumble.
Oh, okay. And there's a World
There's-
Series
it's,
of
it's
bird watching.
competitive bird watching, and it's all done on the honor system.
Does someone like
okay?
cheat? Like I totally saw it, dude. It was right there.
Dude,
that
there's
bird was amazing.
there are Ivy League bird watching teams. There are. There's a whole subplot in the episode about how the Cornell guys, one of their team captain left and went to Harvard, so now the Harvard team has the former
that was an inside
has
track.
the former all-star from Cornell.
Those guys are all
on the
juicing
bird watching
too.
team.
They're all on the juice.
Right,
it's
yeah.
like-
I can't wait for the follow up when they do the performance enhancing drugs for the bird. Like they have carrot juice to make their eyesight
damn it.
super keen.
it's
And
Bastards.
it all works on the honor system too. So
That's all the
you-
rhodopsin they're going to gain in their eyes when the vitamin A gets metabolized. Yeah,
That's right.
That's going to be their performance naps. And yeah,
Yeah, dude, it's 24 hours. They
Oh.
start at the stroke of midnight and they go 24 hours with no sleep.
and what they don't tell you is that's the very end of a 2-week-long meth binge.
Yeah, they're on a total bender. They're all
So they haven't slept in like months, dude.
Yeah, there's a scene where the one guy spots a bird, but the other guy is just dismantling the camera.
It's half words that they hallucinated that they thought they saw.
Right,
You know?
and again, it's on the honor system. Right, nobody checks to see if you actually saw that bird.
That is
It's
hilarious.
totally the honor system.
All right, well, I'm going to bring us all the way back to where we should go.
Sorry about the tangent. So new bands
Slash
or
underrated
slash
bands.
underrated bands, part 2, The Revenge.
So let me start off. The first one I want to do is mention a couple of new bands. I'll mention. Let's just kind of go back and forth. I'm thinking one new band that I felt horrible that I didn't mention in the previous podcast is a band called Firewind, and that is Gus G's band. And that band is awesome. There was a
Yeah.
lead singer. The first, I guess, the original lead singer of the band was a guy named Apollo, which is he's from Greece, so
So
his name was
appropriate.
Apollo. But that guy was awesome. He was like a great singer, and they've had great singers since too. But I gotta tell you, I mean,
Apollo was a great boxer. I hate what Drago did to him.
he's also an amazing god. Him and his sister
Yeah.
Artemis. Oh my god.
Definitely.
But no, what I'm trying to say though is that band was incredible. So if you guys can ever hunt down any like the first 5-6 Firewind records, and then even the newer ones he's done has been great too. Because Gus is a killer writer. He's a great writer.
Absolutely.
And the keyboardist in that band is a multi-instrumentalist keyboardist guitarist. So he plays second guitar and keyboards and does bitchin' solos and stuff like that. So that band is legit. It's
Rad.
kind of melodic power metal, sort of somewhere between the Scorpions and like Iron Maiden, but maybe slightly more melodic. I would.
Isn't the main tune? It's like "I Am the Fire."
That's one. That's his instrumental. That's an instrumental.
okay. So that's
So songs like "Mercenary Man's" a good one.
Okay.
"Breaking the Silence" is a good one to check out. I'm trying to think. There's so many. There's like a lot of that band is so great. So really, really go check them out. I'm trying to think now. That band is another band. There's kind of in that same movement I actually mentioned to you just a few minutes ago. Is the band called Camelot. Now Camelot is spelled Kamelot. And there's been a few different iterations of that band that they still exist with a different singer, but that's another band in that same sort of goth melodic metal kind of power metal world. Great vocals, great hooks, great riffs, great solos and stuff. Very European. So if you're not into the European power metal thing, you might not be as into it. But that's another band, and right along with Firewind, that I think is a part of that power metal European movement, like a Blind Guardian kind of world that is worth checking out. They're actually really great.
sort of melodic goth.
Yeah, but like more power metal-y than that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So they're not like a goth band. They just have like gothic sort of moments to it.
So not necessarily Dracula's haunted castle, but
More like let's look at the evil ruins of like the Romanian countryside or something like that. You know what I mean? That
okay.
kind of thing.
So Dracula's castle's in the foreground.
Yes, it's more
but-
the other atrocities going on beyond that. But they sing about. I mean, Firewind especially is like a band that would fit right in the late '80s. They wouldn't have felt out of place at all. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I wish Gus G had a longer run with Ozzy.
yeah, but they really didn't let him do anything but just keep the seat warm. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
it's like he even wrote anything. He just got brought in to play solos on that one
Had some
record.
good solos, yeah.
But even the songs were so like mediocre. I mean, it was just you totally tell it's just like let's just get whatever for Ozzy to sing on, and it's fine.
Yeah.
And, which is to me is such a sad thing that standard got lowered that much.
I feel like
you know?
Ozzy's kind of like, to stick with the boxing analogies, he's kind of like a boxer who's been in the ring past, like he should have retired.
and the George Foreman at the end sort of thing. Yeah.
I mean, even George got one more, one more belt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't see Ozzy.
Yeah,
getting
I
another
don't think Ozzy's
belt.
long for this role. I'll be honest
I
with
don't
you.
think so,
I think
yeah.
we're getting towards the end of the run of Ozzy. So I think he keeps talking about going to do another tour and stuff, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like
that's
I'd be very
unfortunate.
surprised if that happens. You know what I mean?
It would have been nice if he had finished his career strong, like Ronnie James Dio
Yeah.
did. Like
And
Ronnie
doing that
never lost a step.
Radio
vocally
City Music Hall thing and with Heaven and Hell. Yeah.
until it was all over.
Yeah, right to the end. Yeah,
Yeah, just
kinda
right to the
BB
end.
King-ish like that. Just go right to
Yeah.
the died on stage, basically. You know what I mean? It's,
Yep.
Or Nick Menza. Hate to say it, but that's
Yeah,
yeah.
God, right. That was too bad.
So, do you have another a new band / underrated band?
Well, I have an underrated band of sorts. So I'm going to give a really strong shout out. Since we're talking about Ozzy and Ronnie, this will be a good segue. And it's kind of its own band, even though they went under the Black Sabbath moniker.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give a shout out to the Tony Martin era of Black
yeah,
Sabbath.
Yeah.
Cozy Powell on drums. It's Tony Iommi. It's Tony Martin on vocals. Somebody played bass. It wasn't Geezer, but it's
Probably
just,
Ainsley Dunsmore or something like that. No, I'm sorry, not Neil Murray. Probably Neil Murray if I had to guess.
oh yeah, maybe Neil
Yeah,
Murray. That's
yeah.
right. But I mean, it's just the bass guitar, so who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Somebody playing bass. Yeah.
The Eternal Idol, Cross Purposes, and Headless Cross are just severe albums.
Well, you know what's funny is as soon as Ozzy came back into Sabbath, they basically just pretended like the Dio and Tony Martin and every other singer, Ray Gillan, Ian Gillan, versions of they all kind of just pretend like that didn't happen.
Like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I think I read something to the effect that Tony Iommi wanted to just make those solo albums. So they're basically Tony Iommi solo albums, but the record label wouldn't let him change
Yeah.
the name of the band
Because they wanted to
thought-
sell more.
Yeah, they wanted to sell more. They thought it'd be more recognition. But I remember distinctly being fired up when Dehumanizer with Ronnie came out and really digging that. And then shortly, like 2 years later, Cross Purposes came out, and it wasn't Ronnie anymore. So I didn't really give it a chance.
Yeah, didn't Joe Lynn Turner get in there for a moment too for Black Sabbath? Or maybe I'm thinking of Deep Purple. I don't know.
Probably would have been Deep Purple. I mean, there definitely wasn't a studio record with Joe Lynn Turner on it.
Okay. I might be thinking of Blackmore because I know he got in on one of those. There's a bunch of like singers that got interchanged a bunch at that time period.
Oh yeah, well with Rainbow, Straight Between the Eyes, that's a great album too.
Yeah, it's true. It's
You
true.
know, I think Rainbow as a band is underrated.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, everybody knows "Man on the Silver Mountain," but
And
people
I think
don't.
most people think that's a Dio song too. They probably don't even realize that's a Rainbow song.
Yeah,
know,
absolutely right. But what about "Kill the King" and "Tarot Woman" and so much great
Blackmore was great, man. He was
great.
so far ahead of his time.
stuff? He
as a
was
guitar
great
player.
in the studio.
Yeah, and even live, I've seen some great old footage of Richie Blackmore playing great stuff, like unbelievably great, like more than I would have thought he'd been capable of.
Yeah, I've
You
got
know.
that Rainbow Live in Germany DVD.
That's a physical media thing.
Yeah, folks, it's a physical media. It looks kind of like a drink coaster or a frisbee.
Yep.
And yeah, you used to put it into this machine under your television, and it would, and then images and sounds would come out of the
Yep.
television.
And that's a thing that's not your phone that you watch things on.
That's
the thing your parents look at.
Although you know what, I bet you could look up the whole performance on YouTube. I bought the DVD at this place called a record store.
That's so funny that you really absolutely. I've so many times in my life bought a Blu-ray and then came home and then realized that whole Blu-ray is on
It's
YouTube,
just on YouTube,
right there.
yeah.
I'm like, what did I just do? It's like, all right. So
Yeah.
let's go into. I'm gonna get an Actually, no. I'm gonna do one more newer band that I forgot to mention last time and I felt bad. It's a band called Epica. And
Oh,
Epica
cool.
is a symphonic metal band, female-fronted, really, really cool band. The one complaint I have about Epica is that they're not quite as heavy, which is kind of the case with a lot of the female-fronted symphonic metal bands. But they're very melodic, and the songcraft and tunefulness is very good. And they do have good solos in that band. So if you're into the sort of Within Temptation, Nightwish, Evanescence sort of world, a band called Epica is really, really, really good. That's definitely worth checking out. That's another band I think that if you like that style, you'll be into.
Yeah. So not as heavy, but the solos are epic.
So and it's epica. The songs are very epic and kind of almost like classical. They have like these big orchestral parts and stuff, and with heavy guitars behind it too, and female, beautiful female vocals. It's almost like it kind of crosses the line between rock singer and opera singer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And-
I love like hard rock / metal bands with awesome female singers.
Yeah, and that band's one of them. So to me, that's like a group of there's like the Lacuna Coils, the Within Temptations, the Nightwishes, the Epicas. Those guys are all kind of a cohort in my group, in my mind,
Totally.
of kind of similar kind of bands. So if you're into that kind of European symphonic metal, that would be a really good one.
Yes, if you want something that's a little bit more, straight between the eyes, so to speak, then I'd recommend there's this band called Ex Aegis.
Yes, that would be also female fronted, but not really symphonic metal. It's really more a hybrid of like classic hard rock and like power metal. I would say
Yes.
it's kind of
Okay,
a
that's
hybrid
good.
between those two, with a little bit of prog thrown in for good measure.
A little bit and killer ripping solos
Yeah.
at all times.
And great melodic vocals the whole time too.
Yes, indeed.
We should
So,
probably mention that Ryan and I are guitar players and co-writers of all that stuff in that band. So,
yes, Ex Aegis.
yep, you got it.
Don't forget it,
Yep.
Ex Aegis.
Coming to some way of hearing it near you sometime this fall.
That's right.
Yep. Okay, do you have another band you want to mention?
Another underrated band. Well, I think before we began the broadcast, we wanted to give a shout out to Michael Schenker Group, or MSG,
Yep.
or Macaulay Schenker Group.
Yep, really, which I'm sure Michael was never on board with that.
Yeah, oh God, no, no,
I'm
no,
sure
no.
it was like in his mind, no, it's Michael Schenker Group. We're not doing that.
Yeah, Macaulay.
Robin McCauley is a great vocalist. by the way.
Robin Macaulay sure lucked out having that initial. That definitely.
I
yeah.
think that band is very underrated. A lot of great songs, a lot of great melodic hooks, and great. I mean, Schenker is not like a shredder per se, but he plays with that just touch and attack and kind of fierceness that is
Absolutely.
so great.
Lots of mixing major and minor modes on the fly.
Yeah, and then throwing in enough diatonic stuff with some, Dorian and minor and mixing those guys together. And I think I'm sure he's not thinking language in his head like, oh, I'm going to do Dorian here or something. He was just sort of
No,
throw
not
it
at
in there.
all.
And it sounds cool. It's just, I think the ferocity and the attack and then
Yeah.
and the songwriting and the riffs are great. You
Yeah,
know?
just listen to the solo from On and On. If you want to know how to attack a pentatonic scale,
Yeah.
then that's the tune.
It's always think of that when someone says, well, pentatonic scales, you don't use them in metal. It's like, you don't?
No, you do all. Yeah, it's absurd.
Then you start just punching them in the face over and over again and then black out. Wake up in a field later that day or something.
And you know what? Whenever I introduce pentatonic scales to a student, I always start with, okay, listen. Here's the thing about the minor pentatonic scale, which is the major pentatonic scale. Yeah. So
This is the one you're going to use more than
yeah,
any
this is
other
the one you're
scale.
going to use. Yeah, this is the common language of rock music. It's the common language of blues. It's the common language of a lot of country stuff.
R&B. Yep.
Yeah. So the thing that's great about the pentatonic scale is that everybody uses it.
Yep.
You know what sucks about the pentatonic scale? Everybody uses it.
Yep. It's kind of like that girl in high school.
It's like in South Park when they tell Kenny that, hey, Kenny, your girlfriend's a whore. And he goes, woohoo! So, yeah. So you've got a player has to know how to make that their own.
Yeah.
Not the girl in high school.
Yes.
The pentatonic scale. They have to learn how to make that their own and deliver it in a way that is authentic, tasteful, all of that.
The hard
and that's
part
part
is
of the challenge.
uniqueness. That's the hard part because so much of that vocabulary has been well-trodden territory for decades now. It's like to try and make that sound like anything that hasn't been heard a million times before is very challenging.
Yep.
But sometimes you'll find that's exactly the right tool for the job, though, which is crazy.
Yeah, if you're working at a steakhouse, serve steak. Thanks for listening to Raw Guitar Confidential with Scott and Ryan. Hey, by now, all those bands that were underrated in the first half, they're overrated now because you're all listening to them. So make sure to like and subscribe, smash that like button. Now back to the show.
Yep, it's true. Now, one other band I want to mention that this is going to be more in the underrated category. And in my mind, this is probably one of the most underrated bands that I can even think of, and that's the band called Fates Warning. Now, Fates Warning is a great band. They've been around forever, too. They've been around since like 85. Like, I think Awaken the Guardian is like 85, 86 or something like that. They're a prog metal band. Kind of, people think of them as a contemporary Dream Theater, but they actually predate Dream Theater. They're more about the same as Queensryche. Came out around the same time as Queensryche. Definitely a lot of similarities to Queensryche. Mm-hmm. In the sense that the vocals are very, very strong, very hooky. They were much more, I would say early they were way more metallic, way more sort of like on that sort of Armored Saint, Maiden-y kind of feel. Although Queensryche was too early on. But they were a little bit more proggy too. They would go off in these really interesting time signatures and stuff, and there'd be more extended solos. Not quite Dream Theater level extended solos in terms of how long they would go on for, but they would be more extended solos than like Iron Maiden would do. Right. And then they sort of morphed into like a very, very tight progressive metal band where they were doing really interesting like Rush meets Metallica type stuff that is incredible. And I mean, obviously, if you like the earlier edition, like think something like Awaken the Guardian would be a good place to start. To me, classic Fates Warning is really Perfect Symmetry, Parallels, and then Inside Out, and then probably finishing with a Perfect Shade of Grey would be like the best ones to kind of get your Fates Warning feet wet. And then they have a later career that's like the one album they put called X. They have an album they put out. It was I'm trying to think, Disconnected, which was really great. And then they've had two very recent ones. One was The Theory of Flight, and then they had Darkness in a Different Light is another really good album they put out. All of them incredibly great. Like there's just great stuff dripping off every section of that. It's incredible. That band's amazing. They've done many tours with Dream Theater. They're like really tight buds with those guys.
Was the silence truly deafening, as David St. Hubbins proclaimed?
That band, though, I can't understand why they're not bigger than they are.
Yeah.
That's a band that kind of reminds me of King's X that way. Like that's
Ooh,
so
King's X.
so
Jeez,
good,
yeah,
and then,
so
like,
good.
and so universally loved by musicians. It's like, but you're still not. They're still playing clubs, 40 years into their career.
And
It's-
that's music that you would think would kind of transcend genre. You know, Gretchen Goes to Nebraska, and
I think Fates is not quite instrumentally wanky enough to appeal to the Dream Theater / Chon Polyphia crowd.
to the guitar nerd.
But it's also too cerebral and too muso for like your average metal fan. I think that's kind of the
Yeah.
niche they're falling into. And same thing with like King's X. They're also too muso for your average music fan, but they're also kind of undefinable genre wise. They're sort of like all over the place. You know what I mean?
There's just such a groove in King's X.
Oh, yeah.
and
great everything.
soulful everything.
Yeah.
Ty
And-
Tabor is a great guitar
Yeah,
player.
of course. I mean, the tones are great. The production's great. The songs are
God,
fantastic.
who wouldn't want to have Doug Pinnick in their band?
Oh, for sure. And a lot of
You
people
know?
do, actually. He plays with a lot of
yeah,
people.
right. Totally. He did a
KXM. Remember that? With Ray Luzier and George Lynch.
Oh, okay. I think I heard about
Yeah,
that.
KXM is a very cool band.
Isn't
It's-
Ray Luzier? He's
He plays in Korn now, but he's played with
Yeah.
everybody.
okay.
Yeah,
got
he's-
it.
He's like
so
one of
he's
those-
getting a paycheck.
Yeah, and but
Dude, how does he tolerate like playing those Korn songs? Like, poor guy.
he's coming undone. I'm sure that's what it is. But
I guess he's just a freak on a leash.
it's true. But it's a highly paid freak on the leash.
You're
so it's
right.
like-
Yeah, the paycheck must
Yeah.
be enormous.
You can have he can have his artistic integrity and go play clubs, or he could go play big festivals and arenas with Korn, and
Yeah, God, isn't that the truth?
it's amazing to me that there's people like our age who have nostalgia for Korn. That actually blows my mind.
Yeah, I've got a. I
As
kind of,
opposed to a storm we weathered and thankfully made through, they actually look back at those like those were good times, man.
yeah, I think being into Korn, man. Jeez, I have a student who. I mean, that was and he's not that much younger than I am. Maybe only 2 or 3 years. But that's the music of his youth, Limp Bizkit. I can't imagine admitting to anybody that
Yeah.
I actually liked Limp
You know what?
Bizkit.
I bet Fred Durst doesn't even admit that.
I don't even know if Fred Durst admits to being Fred Durst.
That's true.
I'd go under.
Would you admit?
No.
My name is Joe Smith. I don't even know what you're talking about. You got
Right,
the wrong
yeah.
person here.
I'd contact the FBI to see if I could get in witness protection.
Exactly. Or witless protection.
Yeah.
And,
Zing.
Ha ha!
Ha-ha.
Take that,
Huzzah, take
guy
that.
who's way more successful than me. Guess we know who owned who now.
That's hilarious. Well, hey, success isn't defined in money only.
That's true, especially when you don't have money or success. hey! I do it for the art, man.
Well, so I'm sure we'll have to set up our Patreon soon. And,
Exactly.
yeah.
No, you know what's funny? I think that here's what I will say on a serious note about that is that I've never been the kind of guy who could do something I didn't truly love musically.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it for a paycheck. I know people that I went to school with who's like, hey, who cares, man? As long as the paycheck. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to live that life, man.
Yeah,
I
totally.
don't want to be playing music I don't believe in.
And honestly,
You know?
and I don't want to be earning a living not involved in music. I've
No,
done that, and it was just soul
No,
crushing.
of course not. But like, you got to find a way to do both.
Yeah.
But you can't like say, "Hey, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make the biggest possible paycheck. I'm going to do
Yeah.
what I want to do, and then find a way to make that work financially."
That's
you know
right.
What I mean, that's. We'll talk about that on a whole.
We'll talk
nother
about that.
podcast.
We've got another one
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah.
So you mentioned there was a song by Fates Warning called Inside Out, or an album.
The album called Inside Out. Yeah,
Got it. So that brought the band XYZ to mind.
I think we talked about those guys last time.
Did we?
Yeah.
Are they, yeah, we
XYZ
did.
is
we did.
awesome. I love that band.
Yeah, when
for
you
sure.
mentioned Inside Out, I just went bing.
But okay, now another band I'll piggyback on that. The prog metal thing is a band called Watchtower that came out around that same time, and it had two brothers. I can't remember the names of the brothers in that band. They have names that are hard to remember. I mean, it's Jim Bezek, maybe I want to say. I think is that the name? Do you know? I can't remember how to pronounce the last name.
Yeah, I don't know.
But they're one of those prog metal bands, kind of similar to Fates Warning, a little bit heavier, a little bit. I would say slightly more on the thrashier side, but they're not quite thrash. And they're definitely that heavy-duty instrumental complexity, really impossible to define stylistically because it's a little bit of everything. And that's another band I think people need to be aware of is Watchtower.
Watchtower
From that
okay.
time period.
Are they kind of like the Striper of Jehovah's Witness rock bands?
No,
the Watchtower.
They're not. I think Watchtower.
No.
It's
Okay.
they remind me of like a cross between like Rush and Savatage. Maybe that's probably a good way to kind of put it.
That sounds awesome.
That is awesome, and that's a band that's really really cool. That is worth checking out. So do you have another?
Very cool. I do have another one. So this is gonna sort of shift gears stylistically a little bit, but I remember around 2006, 2007, it seemed like there was this real movement of sort of. I kind of want to say throwback rock bands. The band I'm about to mention, I think, got lumped into the stoner rock genre. So remember when Wolfmother hit
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
mid? And I remember thinking, well, this is a cool move in the right direction.
Yeah, kind of like Doors-ish, right, sort of thing.
It was kind of, there was a little, I want to say it was a little Zeppelin-y, Sabbath-y. It had, the dude had played in SG.
Yeah. I kind of think the Mars Volta hit around that same time. Too,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. The
Yeah,
Mars
yeah.
Volta,
Yeah.
with bass player from Racer X.
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Juan Aldretti.
Yeah.
Well, when he's in Racer X, he's John Aldretti.
Yeah.
When he's in the Mars Volta, he's Juan Aldretti.
When he's in the Benetton ad. Yeah.
Yes, who I hope is doing all right. I know he had some health issues.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh.
Yeah, Paul Gilbert auctioned off one of his Racer X era guitars.
Oh, wow.
It was one of the
help.
pink ones. Yeah, to help
Yeah.
out with his
That
medical
sucks.
bills.
That sucks, man.
Well, we live in America,
I
the
know.
only country where you go bankrupt
Because
in
you
the
get
developed
sick.
world where
Yeah.
you get sick. Yep.
Yeah.
So
well, you know what? You should have pulled yourself up with bootstraps, man.
yes,
That's what you should have done.
or by your brother-in-law's bootstraps,
yeah. or with your employer's bootstraps, or the
right.
or the medical company that dropped you because you hit your cap, and now you
Yeah.
have to lose everything because you have cancer.
Or damn it,
Yeah.
if you couldn't have harnessed the power of nepotism.
Ah,
Anyway,
Yeah,
I digress.
that's a slight political aside, but it's pretty gross that anybody has to do that. And it's funny, the rest of the world looks at us like we're crazy. That's
Yeah.
the way our system works. It's nuts. So
So
anyway.
so there's another one that can go into another episode, but
or
so-
probably not. We'll probably never come back to that again. Listen, everybody, whatever your political affiliation, as long as you're not in some horrible racist or jingoistic thing, you're welcome here. I don't have
yeah, this
judgment.
podcast
Yeah.
is for everybody.
Yeah,
Sorry,
exactly.
didn't mean to go off on.
Yeah.
I just think it sucks that Juan Aldretti was sick
Yeah.
and that people had to sell their stuff to help him get not
Shouldn't
sick.
happen.
That's all I'm saying.
GoFundMes shouldn't exist.
Yep.
My daughter has cancer. Please help. That's
Yep, I think we can all agree
Yeah.
that sucks.
yep. I
Yep.
think so. Yep, it's true.
So, so the band I'm thinking of, they were called Priestess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, their first album, Hello Master, had some killer songs on it. It was a little bit more. I actually heard the song on the radio, driving home from a party.
And the radio is that thing that's in the background when you turn your car on.
Right,
Yeah.
and I had just bombed with my friends. One of her friends at a party, and the song was called "Talk to Her," and I didn't respond to some correspondence, and so I kind of botched it.
Oh, okay.
That's sort of like the
Oh man, it still bugs you. And it's all these years later.
that's well no it doesn't bug me. I love that I discovered this song at the right time, like driving home, just kind of defeated and hungover.
Yeah.
And it was just the right song at the right time. I mean, if everybody listens to the tune, they'll totally get it.
Yeah.
But and there was a ton of great, like really powerful grooves on that album. Just really killer stuff. There's an element of Sabbathiness to it, but it's hard hitting and it's catchy. Anyway, so there's that first album, Hello Master, and then a couple years later they released a follow-up album. You know what? They were kind of like High on Fire, just light.
Yeah. Like not as heavy as that.
Yeah, exactly. Not as heavy as that, so a little catchier than that. It was really cool stuff. Well, so on their second album, though, they went way proggy and way heavier. It kind of reminded me of how Skid Row's first album had the ballads and it was a
Yeah.
little bit
A
catchier.
little bit more like mainstream.
Yeah, and then most bands on their sophomore effort would try to get even more poppy.
Yeah.
But Skid Row didn't do that. They got heavier. Priestess did the same thing. They
Yeah.
got heavier and proggier.
Huh.
And their second album was killer, and then the label dropped them.
Oh, how perfect.
And they were just one of these bands I was discovering all these bands from up in Canada or recordings. Another one from that time. There's an album out there called The Lucky Ones by Pride Tiger,
Huh.
and it sounds like Thin Lizzy.
Oh, wow.
It is so great. It's like Phil Lynott rose from the grave and made the best album of his life.
Wow.
And that
that's
says a
amazing.
lot because I love Thin Lizzy. So
Yeah,
that was
totally.
another one. And then researching the band, apparently they were all death metal guys that decided they wanted to create a Thin Lizzy sounding album.
Yeah.
And it's just very, very good.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, killer
well, it's
stuff.
funny along those lines of we talked about this a little bit on the last new bands thing. There's a couple of sort of super groupish type bands that people should be aware of. One of them is a band that my band was lucky enough to open for on their last tour, which was a band called Act of Defiance. Now, Act of Defiance is the band that features Sean Drover and Chris Broderick from Megadeth. Along with I think it's Matt from Shadows Fall on bass, and I think it's Henry is the lead singer in that band, and really good band. It's kind of in that sort of modern metal, sort of metalcore-ish Shadows Fall style with the screamed vocals and melodic choruses, but with Chris Broderick on guitar, just
Rad.
ripping your face off. The guy, it's so cool.
Well,
Fierce riffs.
and Drover's no slouch
Yeah,
either.
exactly. That band was really good. So they put 2 records out, definitely worth checking out. And then another band that's another supergroup is Black Country Communion, which is a band that everybody should be aware of. That's with Joe Bonamassa on guitar, Derek Schrenning on keyboards, Jason Bonham, not John Bonham, that did not bring him back from the dead. Jason Bonham on drums, and then Glenn Hughes on vocals and bass. And that band is legit. They're kind of deep purple-y, sort of heavy rock, like 70s inspired heavy rock. And it's really fun to hear Bonamassa playing like a rock player. That's something that's really, really cool. There's also another band. This is where my research is failing me. There's a band that just recently came out that's got Steve Stevens, Geezer Butler.
Whoa.
And then the drummer from Guns N' Roses. It's like Matt Sorum. And I'm not sure who the singer is. There's a new singer in that band. I think it's
who the singer is
I
after
think the
that?
band's called Deadland Ritual. And that's a really cool, obviously great combination of different people in that band. And it's all guys everybody's heard of before, but people don't know the name of the band. And that's something that I think is something worth checking out if you're a classic rock and metal fan. And then the last one I'll hand back to you is I want to mention is a band called Symphony X, which is another band that anybody who likes prog metal needs to be checking out. Symphony X. That's Michael Romeo is the guitar player. Russell Allen's the lead singer in that band. No relation. I'm not plugging.
Yeah,
in.
you have a bias towards the Allens. That's fine.
But that band is great, and there's just so many great records. And in fact, if you like that, you should also check out Michael Romeo's solo stuff too. It's actually fantastic. So it's
underrated guitar player, really.
But strangely enough, everyone seems to know who he is. But he's just like I think he's he just does what he wants to do and doesn't fit in any kind of trend. What I love, I respect so much about that is that he didn't even back in the day give a crap about that. You know what I mean? He's just like, even back in like the late 90s when that band first really broke, he was like, I'm going to do, Yngwie meets prog metal sort of thing. And
he's kind of Impellitteri-like as far as that goes.
But I would say Impellitteri is a little bit more like sheer power, like kind of thing. And I think he's more finesse than Impellitteri. I'm not judging
that's a good
either way.
That's a good evaluation.
Not that Michael can't rip your face off too. It's just one of those things. I feel like his stuff's more nuanced. I think Impellitteri is like a freaking machine gun.
Yeah, pedal to the metal all the time.
Yeah, exactly. But that's another band. So do you have another underrated / new band?
Well, when you mentioned Black Country Communion, for some reason I immediately think of Winery Dogs.
Oh, Winery Dogs is great. Yeah,
great.
I love Winery Dogs. I didn't think about those guys. Those guys are great. Yeah.
Well, and then Richie Kotzen, just in general.
Yeah.
What he's doing right now.
So if you guys don't know what Winery Dogs are, that's Billy Sheehan on bass, Mike Portnoy on drums, and then Richie Kotzen on guitar and vocals. Which obviously, if you know who those guys are, that's instant buy. And not to go completely
go for it.
Another band, Sons of Apollo, is another band you should check out because that's Billy Sheehan on bass, Mike Portnoy on drums, Derek Schrenning on keyboards, Ron Thal on guitar, and Jeff Scott Soto on vocals.
Oh, right.
And that band is like a kind of a Dream Theater-ish. It's sort of like a 90s version of Dream Theater style music. With very complex stuff, cool songs. Soto's a great vocalist. And obviously Derek is a monster keyboard player. And that band is just incredible, man. If anybody who's a fan of like prog metal should absolutely be supporting Sons of Apollo. That band's great.
That sounds awesome, man. And actually, anyone who's a fan of melodic rock should just go find the Jeff Scott Soto Wikipedia page and check out every album he ever participated in.
Sing on Rising Forest, man. And
that's right. And then he's got a song called Lost in Translation. The first track has Neil Schon on guest guitars.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the album is a guitar player by the name of Howie Simon.
Oh, wow.
Who is a real personal favorite. Really tasteful guitar player.
Yeah.
He's got the shred chops, but the guitars on that particular album, Jeff Scott Soto's Lost in Translation album, his solo album, it's definitely one of my top 30 favorite guitar albums.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Steve Perry album with Lincoln Brewster on lead guitar. That's a really good record. I think it's For the Love of Strange Medicine is the name of that album.
Cool.
And Lincoln Brewster, who's gone on to be kind of a big in the Christian music circles.
I
and
was
stuff like
just
that.
I was just wondering, like, do you mean that Lincoln
Yeah,
Brewster?
but
I mean, how
at the
many Lincoln
time
Brewsters?
he was like a hard rock
Not to be
monster.
confused with Lincoln J. Brewster, kind of like Yngwie J. Malmsteen. I just didn't
From
know
all
which
the other
one.
Lincoln. No,
Right,
But
yeah.
That album, he's playing like a monster. He's just got incredible chops and it's just ballsy kind of rock thing. I think, boy, I wish he had stayed in that vein because I would have liked to see more of that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But that's another our guitar player that was great on that. The album, it's an underrated album. It's by Steve Perry, lead singer for Journey, and it's called For the Love of Strange Medicine. Really, really, really good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So speaking of the Journey connection, I'm totally willing to admit I really loved Vinnie Vincent Invasion.
Of course, yeah, BVI, yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah,
Mark Slaughter and Dana Strum too. I mean, that's,
On the second album, and then
Yeah.
it was Robert Fleischman
Yeah,
on the first
yeah,
album.
yeah.
And for those of you who don't know who that is, he was the original singer for Journey.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so-
I think that band's very underrated. I think Vinnie Vincent did a very strange sort of self-immolation kind of thing that he kind of,
Yeah.
took himself out of the game almost,
Yeah, Bobby Rock, the drummer, he has a memoir out.
Oh, I can only imagine.
It's a really great read. It's a page turner, and it just chronicles his whole time from getting plucked to be in from auditioning for Vinnie Vincent Invasion to getting the gig and the whole experience, the whole way through, all the way.
he
until
also
the
went on to be the
breakup.
drummer in Nelson after that, right?
That's right. He there's
currently
a-
drummer in Lita Ford, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There's an interesting anecdote. He did the session work for the first Nitro album.
Oh wow.
But if you look at the photos, he's wearing the big reflective Oakleys of that era. He looks like a WWE wrestler.
Yeah, that's true.
Because he's buffed.
All right, brother.
Yeah, all right,
play some
brother.
drums.
24-inch pythons. Yeah, right. And he says he wore those glasses because he had to do the photo shoot, but he wasn't really a member of the band.
Oh, so they can maybe replace it and say someone
Yeah.
else. Is
thought
it really
that
that
was
big
great.
of a contest to get into a band with Jim Gillette and Michael Badio back in the 80s, though? I mean,
Yes, man.
that's so funny.
Yeah, absolutely. So
That- Nitro, by the way, guys, is Michelangelo Badio's one of his original bands that he
Yeah.
kind of got known for. So
super nice guy.
yeah, I've heard nothing but good things. Great guitar player too.
Yeah.
But that's like an early version of that band.
Definitely a leader in guitar education.
Yeah, I agree with that. And has a thriving teaching practice of his own and does
Yep.
very well at clinics and touring.
Yep.
which is pretty-
I got to thank him personally this past year for giving me the keys to the Lamborghini. And he said, "You're welcome." So that was really cool. I mean, it was all via text, but so thank you officially, Michael Badio, for
Yeah.
giving me those keys.
That is so cool.
I've
man.
been driving that Lamborghini ever since.
So I'm trying to think. There's probably a few other like underrated bands that we got to try and underrated/new bands that we got to try and get some pub to. I can think of there's one that's kind of a super group. This came out a long time ago. It's from like 2004 maybe. It's a band called The Mob. And that was Doug Pennick, Reb Beach, Kelly Key from Night Ranger was in that band as well.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Very, very cool stuff. So that's another band I think people need to be aware of. Also, I mean, everyone probably knows this, but another band I'll mention is Liquid Tension Experiment, which is basically the very early incarnation of the Jordan Rudess era of Dream Theater. That was Petrucci on guitar, Mike drums, Tony Levin from Peter Gabriel and King Crimson on bass, and Jordan Rudess on keyboards. That band is all instrumental, progressive stuff. They put out 3 records now. Great instrumental progressive stuff. So if you're a fan of like the very hardcore, oh my gosh, there's a few other bands too I got to mention.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, there's in the early 2000s, late 90s, there's this record label that was an offshoot of Shrapnel Records called Magna Carta Records. And Magna Carta Records had a few bands on that were actually really great. And I'll mention a couple of them. One is a band called Cairo. And Cairo was awesome. They kind of reminded me of like a more progressive hard rock version of Yes. They had similar kind of vocals to like classic Yes, like close to the Edge era, going for the One era Yes. But it was like more modern production, kind of crunchier guitars. But that band was really great. And there was another band called Shadow Gallery that came out around that time too. That was kind of more in the Queensryche vein. And I thought those guys were really great. That's a band that I think should have made more noise. But basically,
That sounds like a Rod Sterling TV series.
Shadow Gallery.
Shadow Gallery with Rod Sterling.
will they ever find their meaning in life?
Yes, that's
Find
right.
out next on the Shadow Gallery.
I love it.
Yeah, no, but no, that band's really great. They're kind of heavier. Like they kind of remind me like a proto Symphony X almost. They kind of had all the same elements as Symphony X. They just were a little bit more, I would say, classic metal rather than the more heavier stuff that came later. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that's another band that's definitely worth checking out. If you're into the prog gear stuff, definitely the prog gear stuff would be more on that. I should probably give them a shout out too. There's a great record. It's like a super group, almost like a project record called the Explorers Club that came out around that same time. And it was kind of a grab bag of all kinds of different musicians. I mean, James Labrie sang on that. Some of the guys from Cairo and Shadow Gallery sang on that. They had Mike Portnoy on drums. They had Derek Shrinian on keyboards. They had Kevin Moore on keyboards. They had James Murphy on guitar, John Petrucci on
James
guitar.
Murphy, yeah.
They had a bunch of different players.
Incarnate, or Disincarnate, I think.
Oh,
was
James
his
Murphy's
big
solo
album.
records are
Yeah.
great, man. James Murphy, who played for a short time in both Death and in Testament, really, really, really great guitar player.
He also played in Obituary for a while, didn't
Yeah,
he?
he's kind of made the rounds, and
Yeah.
actually, like the newest incarnation of the celebration of spiritual healing from death, he actually is playing guitar. He's one of the guitar players.
Wait, now there's a new incarnation.
Well, it's not. They're doing like some tributes to I think try and promote like this new. I guess there was a new release, a new like remastered version. Or
That's
something.
cool.
And they were doing like some celebration shows, just a
So
handful.
that's Paul Masvidal.
I don't know. I just know James Murphy's playing guitar in that. There's one of the guitar player in that band too.
That's cool. I wonder if it is Masvidal.
I think I'm pretty sure it's
because he would've
DiGiorno, Steve DiGiorno on bass. I want to say who makes amazing pizza. By
I
the
was
way,
going to say he makes amazing pizzas. Damn it! You beat me to the punch
Damn
on
it!
that one.
Sorry, Ryan.
I was loading that. I was loading that up, and then you beat
It's
me
not
to the
delivery.
punch.
It's DiGiorno.
Yeah, DiGiorno. Do you mean Steve DiGiorgio?
Is that his name? Okay,
yeah. Okay.
Maybe that must be what it was.
Yeah,
he's playing in Testament now. Whatever. I don't.
Yeah, he's like the Tony Franklin of death metal.
Great
Death
bass player.
metal.
If you heard the newest Testament record, Titans of Creation,
Oh, I'm
he's
sure it's
playing
great.
some incredible stuff. Him and Skullneck playing off each other is actually pretty great.
Yeah, and
I'll give a
shout out
shout
to Eric Peterson too for keeping that alive all these years.
Eric
man.
Peterson's such an underrated musician.
Such
man.
a good dude.
He is also like such a great riff writer. I mean, he's like
Yeah.
he's not at all appreciated in that world enough. How good he is.
Yeah.
like his riffs are great. If you go listen to any Testament record, there's like killer stuff. I mean, like that's the thing he brings to the table. He's a great songwriter. He's got a great sense for like hooks and melodies, even though it's in the thrash metal world.
Yeah.
I mean, he's very underrated. I mean, everyone talks about Hetfield and Iommi and Dave Mustaine.
No, Eric Peterson.
Not to
yeah.
take anything away from those guys,
No,
but
no.
Eric Peterson deserves to be exactly in that same conversation.
Yeah, without
He's-
a doubt, dude.
He's
Same,
unbelievable.
same
you know?
quality, and
Yeah.
he still shops at his local music store. It
Yeah.
Skips Music.
It's true. And it's
Very, very cool guy.
good dude. Yeah, and I mean, I feel in a way angry that he's so underrated. I mean, all the
Yeah.
Testament fans love him and know how great he is, but it's like,
I mean, Testament as a band, there's all the obsession over the birth.
Yep.
You know, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax.
Yeah.
But I mean, Testament. I mean, I know they're the second wave of thrash or whatever.
yeah, you got
but
like the Overkills and like another band
Death Angel.
Death Angel's great.
They're
actually.
great.
Yeah, Death Angel's a really great band.
Yeah.
Act 3, and then their newest stuff's doing great too. I mean, it's I don't know. There's not a drop off with that band. That band's good.
Yep, all the time.
You know, shows up for work and they just kick ass. You know, there's not anything. There's just nothing but stuff to love in what
Yeah,
they do.
nothing but stuff to love. I remember reading an interview with their guitar player, and he was talking about at a certain point, the record label made them change the name of their band to DA, just initials.
Because they were going in law. That was basically what it was.
right. Yeah, district attorney.
And they had
yeah.
like an offshoot band called Assistant DA.
ADA, and they make really great preamps.
This is my other band, Paralegal. You know, it's like, you know.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. You know, they were in an era where Death Angel was too controversial a band.
I mean,
name.
I'm sure Megadeth had conversations about changing the name of that band in the '90s. I'm sure
I wonder
they
if
probably did.
that's why there's why it's DETH. I wonder why Megadeth is spelled that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was trying to be clever back in the day, but you know.
Probably.
But that being said, I'm sure in the '90s, especially when they started getting more mainstream, like Countdown to Extinction and Cryptic Writings, which I love those records, but I don't have any problem with those
Yeah.
records at all. But I think I'm sure they were probably trying to maybe move away from the mega death, kind of.
Yeah, I just read an article. I think it was yesterday or the day before. It popped up on my house about how it was a song off. What's the last album with Marty Friedman on it?
That would be. Oh my God, what's it called? It's one with the.
Euthanasia?
It's got the Crush 'Em. No, it's like this. Risk. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so I think it was Risk, and whatever the hit song that was supposed to be radio friendly.
That was Crush 'Em, I think.
Was it Crush It?
Yeah,
Crush
it's
'Em was
supposed to-
like
they're
on
going for
an
the
action movie
WWE
soundtrack.
thing or something. That
Yeah, so I guess Marty contributed a solo, but it was a Marty Friedman solo.
yeah.
And the record label said it was too far out there, and so Dave ended up recording the solo, and Marty was pissed, rightfully so,
Yeah.
that they didn't use the solo on the song. Yeah, because they were trying to make a single out
I
of
gotta
it.
tell you, it really makes me sort of nostalgic for a time when like a major record label would be caring about anything to do with a metal band, even to have a
well,
conversation
yeah,
about
that's
that.
another- yeah, that's
We're-
a whole
what's-
other
What do we do with the
thing.
radio? Like, no metal bands even can sniff radio these days. So it's like,
Yeah, well, radio doesn't even exist these
yeah,
days.
not
It's a
not,
whole,
not the way it did. That's
no,
for sure.
not at all.
Yeah, which is crazy. So that's probably a
So,
good
yeah.
place to start wrapping up. All right, well, I'm sure we're gonna come back in like another 2 months and have like a whole bunch of bands we completely forgot, like this group.
Yeah, well, I think
Yeah.
this is going to be a recurring a recurring segment. Like a few other segments of
Yeah.
ours will be recurring as we get into the groove of Rock Guitar Confidential.
Hopefully, this kind of gives you some heads up on some great bands to check out. And if depending on where you're coming from musically, hopefully you'll find some of these newer or older bands that maybe you missed and find something you really dig, and that could be part of your your life from that point on.
Yeah, and hopefully for those of you out there who are guitar players, you'll find some new points of inspiration and get some cool new ideas and new perspectives.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Ryan. We will have socials up shortly, as well as our feed for you to kind of yell at us and tell us how terrible we are and all that stuff. Please make sure to rate and try and subscribe to this
Only
podcast.
5-star reviews.
Yes, I think if you really just 5. I think there's 5 stars. If you really don't like us, then they could go 4 stars. That's the
4.5.
yeah, something like that. That's
Yep.
what we're looking for. So just think about that and do the right thing. So
All right. Thanks. Peace.